Apparently, the flag of Belarus, which is white, red, and white, is a Nazi flag, while Ukraine, Poland, and Lithuania are organizing a coup in Belarus, and kids in Ukrainian schools are being forced to pray and sing fascist songs. But this is Stop Fake, the place where we dissect fakes about Ukraine and a little more. So let's get to it. Russian media have been very busy broadcasting disinformation about the mass protests that began in Belarus back on August the 9th in the aftermath of the presidential elections that Alexander Lukashenko claims he won. As the protests spread throughout the country, pro-Kremlin media in particular began publishing stories blaming the Lublin Triangle, that is, Lithuania, Poland, and Ukraine, of organizing a coup in Belarus. According to the Russian media narrative, this new three-way alliance was created specifically to tear Belarus as far away as possible from Russia. Newsfront and Politnavigator claim that these three countries are Russophobic and are trying to steer Maidan-type processes in Belarus, referring to Ukraine's 2014 Maidan protests. Now, the Lublin Triangle is a three-way political union, including Lithuania, Poland, and Ukraine, which was created on July the 28th of this year. Pro-Kremlin media have been pushing the narrative that the group is Russophobic because the foreign ministers of three countries issued a joint declaration following the July 28th meeting. That declaration called on Russia to end its aggression against Ukraine, end the occupation and annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, and withdraw its troops from Ukraine's eastern Donbass. Look, in reality, the main area of cooperation between the three countries is developing trade, investment, and infrastructure projects, and not state coups or civil unrest, as Newsfront and Politnavigator allege. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has emphasized that the three countries have access to 3 seas, 83 million people, almost 770 billion in collective GDP, and 982 square kilometers of territory, and together they have enormous economic and political potential. There was never any attempt on the part of the Lublin Triangle to interfere in the internal affairs of Belarus. Quite the contrary. The group offered its assistance in establishing an open dialogue between the Belarusian authorities and the opposition. Neither the Lublin Triangle, nor the European Union, nor the United States have pushed for a revolution in Belarus. The people of Belarus took to the streets in protest after Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus for 26 years, declared that he had won another landslide victory following the August 9th presidential elections. As the protests in Belarus and strikes continued throughout the country, social media posts have appeared claiming that the white and red flag of Belarus that protesters have been waving is actually a Nazi and fascist flag. Calling groups and people Nazis and fascists is the go-to narrative of Russian disinformation. But in fact, the white and red flag of Belarus has been a symbol of Belarus's national movement since the end of the 19th century and was the national flag of Belarus from 1991 through to 1995. The first Belarusian National Congress was held under the white-red-white flags. Vitaly Skalsky, a historian with Ukraine's National Academy of Sciences, says, quote, "The Belarus flag, just as the Ukrainian flag, came out of the Spring of Nations era of the 19th century. In 1917, with the beginning of the collapse of the Russian Empire, all national movements wanted their own standards, particularly flags, or at least national colors. The new Soviet government perceived the Belarus flag as hostile, but the Belarus national movement adopted this flag and actively used it in territories not controlled by the Bolsheviks. When Belarus was part of the Soviet Union, its official flag was the red flag of communism, and from 1951, the official flag was red and green with elements of embroidery on the left side. The white-red-white flag was considered anti-Soviet. However, Belarus political and cultural organizations abroad continued using it as the national standard of Belarus. Now, during the period of Nazi occupation from 1941 through to 1945, the white-red-white flag was allowed to be displayed alongside German flags and symbols. The Nazi occupation authorities allowed such steps to appease the Belarus national movement and opponents of the communist regime. Again, the historian Vitaly Skalsky explains that during World War II, part of the Belarus national movement risked cooperation with the Nazis because they considered this an opportunity for the revival of national statehood. The The Belarus partisan movement, which was anti-Nazi and anti-communist, also considered this flag its national standard, although in actual fact, the movement had no means to make the flag official. In September of 1991, the Belarus Supreme Soviet enacted a law on the Belarus state flag, making the white-red-white flag the official flag of Belarus, which it was until 1995, when a referendum was held under the presidency of Alexander Lukashenko about adopting a new flag and coat of arms. According to official referendum results, 75.1% voted for a new flag. Russian media continue to accuse Ukraine of radical nationalism. No surprise. The Kremlin-faithful Federal News Agency published a story claiming that Ukrainian children would be forced to pray to two icons of Ukrainian statehood and independence, Simon Petlura and Stepan Bandera, and sing the Ukrainian national anthem daily. But these claims are a complete distortion of reality, but nevertheless, Sputnik, Novosti, and other media outlets faithfully republished manipulated versions of Ukrainian school realities. The Federal News Agency writes that Ukraine's Education Ministry has approved a proposal put forth by Ukrainian nationalists to introduce patriotic education in schools. This publication describes this as a recent development, but in fact, the Education Ministry approved its concept of national patriotic education back in 2009. It is true that recently the Kyiv City Council recommended singing the national anthem in the capital schools. However, the council's vote is a recommendation and not a legislative act. Similar initiatives have taken place in other Ukrainian cities, for example in Ternopil, Vinnytsia, and Chernivtsi, but they have certainly not swept through all of Ukraine, as Russian media claim. Now, Ukrainian students are not obliged to pray in schools at all. No such laws were passed. Most likely, the authors of this distorted story misrepresented the words of a Chernivtsi City Council member who proposed that students pray at the start of the school day, or twisted the recommendations presented by the Ivano-Frankivsk Regional Council that the national anthem be sung in schools daily. It's important to remember that all of these motions are merely recommendations. They have been accepted by a few regions, but they are not obligatory for all of Ukraine. The historic figures of Simon Petlura and Stepan Bandera don't figure in any of these recommendations, but that did not deter Russia's Federal News Agency from using their names as a boogeyman for the alleged rabid nationalism being forced on Ukrainian school children. That's it for this week. Stay safe and be on the lookout for fakes. Don't forget, washing your hands and social distancing will protect you from the coronavirus, and critical thinking will protect you from Russian disinformation. As always, if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, forward it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.